I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would fall for a scam. I considered myself cautious, even skeptical, especially when it came to money. But desperation does things to you. It blurs judgment, makes risks look like opportunities, and makes lies sound like salvation. That was exactly the state I was in when the so-called government grant appeared in my life. It all started with bills. They came in stacks, like soldiers lined up against me. Each envelope another reminder of how badly I was failing. Rent had gone up, groceries cost more, and my job didn't pay enough to keep up. I had been working extra hours, cutting corners, skipping meals just to make things stretch, but it never seemed like enough. The anxiety was constant. I would lie awake at night thinking of the number in my bank account, watching it shrink with every automatic payment, every unexpected expense. There were days I wondered if I'd have to choose between keeping the lights on or putting food on the table. Then came the call. I almost didn't answer because the number was unfamiliar, but something told me to pick up. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and surprisingly kind. He introduced himself as Mr. Bennett from the Federal Grants Administration. He said he was calling because I had been selected for a government grant program designed to help people struggling financially. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Why would the government be calling me directly? But he was prepared for that. He explained that the pandemic had left thousands of Americans behind, and a new grant initiative had been launched to provide relief. He said my name had come up in a random selection from public assistance databases. It wasn't a loan, he stressed. It wasn't something I would have to pay back. It was free money. $10,000, tax-free, to help me get back on my feet. My heart raced. $10,000? That was more than enough to pay my debts, catch up on rent, and breathe for the first time in months. It sounded like a miracle. Still, I was hesitant. I asked him how I could be sure this was real. That's when he gave me a grant ID number and directed me to a website. The site looked official, filled with government seals, case numbers, and links to real agencies like the Department of Health and Human Services. I typed in the ID number, and sure enough, my name appeared on the screen with a note saying I was approved. It felt too good to be true, but at the same time, everything looked so real. Mr. Bennett continued, his voice steady and reassuring. He said all I had to do was pay a one-time processing fee of $250 to release the funds. He framed it as a security deposit, a way to prove my identity and ensure the grant went to the right person. Think of it as a small investment to unlock a much larger blessing, he said. A part of me hesitated. I didn't have $250 to spare, not really. But I couldn't stop thinking about what that $10,000 could do. It wasn't just about money. It was about relief, about hope. I could finally breathe again. I could finally stop worrying about the next bill, the next overdue notice, the next eviction threat. I convinced myself that it made sense. After all, $250 was nothing compared to $10,000. And if this was real, then it was the best chance I'd ever had to pull myself out of the hole I was drowning in. So I paid. I remember sending the money through the payment method he suggested, a wire transfer to what he described as a government partner account. It sounded strange, but the way he explained it made it seem routine, almost boring. He even emailed me a receipt with the government seal on top, complete with signatures and reference numbers. When the transfer was complete, he congratulated me. He told me the funds would be processed within 48 hours and I'd receive the money directly into my account. I hung up the phone that day feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel hope. But that was just the beginning. The first 2 days after I sent the $250, I walked around with a sense of cautious optimism. I checked my bank account every few hours, waiting for that miraculous deposit to appear. I imagined the moment I'd see my balance jump by $10,000, how I'd scream in relief, maybe even cry, how I'd finally feel like life had given me a break instead of another punch in the gut. But 48 hours passed, and nothing happened. I called Mr. Bennett back, trying to keep my voice calm even though my hands were shaking. He answered right away, almost as if he had been waiting for me. He apologized in the same professional, steady tone he'd used before. He explained that there had been a processing delay because my grant application required additional verification. Don't worry, he assured me. Your funds are secured. We just need to complete the final clearance with the Department of Treasury. Unfortunately, there's a refundable insurance fee of $500 to release it. My stomach dropped. Another fee. I hesitated, telling him I'd already sent money. He sympathized, even sounded genuinely sorry. Then he leaned on my emotions. "Look," he said softly, "you've already done the hard part. You're so close. Why give up now when you're on the brink of receiving $10,000? Don't let this opportunity slip away." The way he said it made me feel like walking away would make me a fool. I told myself that scams are usually quick. They don't invest this much time. They don't provide websites, documents, and constant communication. Maybe this really was just an extra step. Against my better judgment, I paid the $500. This time, he emailed me a PDF grant approval letter with my name, the U.S. seal, and even a signature from someone claiming to be the Secretary of the Treasury. It looked official enough to convince me again. But after another 48 hours, still no money appeared in my account. I called back. Again, he answered smoothly. He said there had been an issue with my bank's international routing system, and the funds had been flagged. To fix it, he explained, I needed to pay a foreign transaction clearance fee of $750. That's when the panic started to set in. Each time I thought I was done, another barrier appeared. But at this point, I had already sunk $750 total into the process. Walking away meant admitting I had wasted everything. Continuing felt like the only way to save myself from that reality. So I paid again. Looking back, I can see how masterfully they played me. Every time I expressed doubt, they soothed me with fake documents, with promises, with urgency. They reminded me of how far I had already come. They turned my desperation into a weapon against me. Days turned into weeks. Every time I thought I had finally reached the last step, another fee appeared. IRS tax clearance, funds release permit, anti-fraud verification. The numbers climbed higher, $1,200, then $1,800, then $2,000. Each time, the scammers reassured me that this would be the final hurdle, that once I crossed it, the money would be mine. And each time, I convinced myself to go along because I had already spent so much. It was like sinking in quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I went. By the end of the month, I had wired away nearly $6,000. $6,000 I didn't have to lose. Money I borrowed from friends, from payday loans, from maxed-out credit cards. Money I told myself would be paid back the moment the grant arrived. Eventually, I called the number one last time, desperate for answers. This time, no one picked up. I tried again. Voicemail. The calm, professional Mr. Bennett, the man who had spent hours assuring me everything was fine, was gone. My emails bounced back. The website that once looked so official now showed an error message. This page does not exist. That was the moment reality finally hit me. I had been scammed. Completely, utterly scammed. The floor seemed to fall out from under me. I remember staring at my empty bank account, feeling sick, like I couldn't breathe. $6,000 gone. Not just money. Hope, trust, dignity. All of it stolen in plain sight. When I finally accepted that I had been scammed, the shame hit harder than the financial loss itself. It's one thing to lose money in a way you can't control, like an accident or a robbery. But this? I had willingly handed over every dollar. I had typed in the amounts, confirmed the transfers, and hit send again and again, convincing myself each time that I was making the smart choice. For weeks, I replayed every phone call, every email, every moment I ignored that gut feeling telling me something was wrong. I remembered how polished Mr. Bennett sounded, how his tone mirrored the calm authority of a government official. I remembered how he always had an answer ready, never hesitating, never stumbling over a single word. And I remembered how desperately I wanted to believe that anyone, cared enough to help me climb out of the hole I was in. That's what made the scam work. It wasn't the fake documents or the bogus websites. It was the manipulation of hope. They knew I was vulnerable. They knew I was tired of struggling, tired of hearing no from every real institution. And they dangled exactly what I needed most, a chance to breathe again. The damage stretched far beyond the $6,000 I had lost. My rent was late. My bills piled up. Creditors called day after day. Friends I had borrowed from started asking when I would pay them back, and I didn't know what to say. I even avoided answering calls from family because I couldn't face admitting what I'd done. At night, I lay awake replaying the scam in my head. I thought about the moment I clicked send on that first transfer, the way I had smiled to myself thinking relief was just around the corner. And then I thought about the moment I realized the number was disconnected, the website gone, the emails bouncing back. It was like watching two different versions of myself. One full of hope, the other crushed under the weight of betrayal. The worst part was knowing I wasn't alone. Once I started searching online, I found endless stories of others who had fallen for the exact same government grant scam. Victims from every age group, every background. Some had lost hundreds, others tens of thousands. Many, like me, felt too embarrassed to tell anyone. Some never even reported it because they thought no one would care. That's when anger began to replace my shame. These scammers weren't just criminals. They were predators, deliberately targeting people at their lowest points. They built systems designed to look official, scripts designed to disarm suspicion, and psychological tricks designed to keep us hooked until we had nothing left to give. So I reported it. I called my bank, even though the money was gone. I contacted the Federal Trade Commission and the local police, even though I knew they couldn't magically recover my money. I even posted my story in online forums, exposing the phone numbers and email addresses they had used, hoping maybe I could stop at least one more person from going through what I did. Recovery was slow. It took months to catch up on bills, months of swallowing my pride and asking for help from people I didn't want to admit the truth to. It took therapy to shake the crushing shame that made me feel stupid every time I thought about it. And it took time, a lot of time, to rebuild even a shred of trust in anything that promised financial help. But here's what I learned. Scams thrive in silence. They thrive when victims feel too embarrassed to speak, too ashamed to admit they were tricked. They thrive because every person who stays quiet becomes proof for the scammer that their scheme still works. That's why I'm telling my story now. Not because I enjoy reliving it, but because someone watching this might be standing exactly where I stood. Broke, desperate, and clinging to the idea that maybe, just maybe, someone is offering a lifeline. If that's you, please hear me. Real government programs don't ask you to send money first. They don't call you out of the blue. They don't pressure you with final fees or urgent deadlines. And they certainly don't vanish the second you ask too many questions. Scammers are patient, persuasive, and polished. They know exactly what words to use. They'll sound friendly, supportive, even empathetic. But if money has to leave your account before help comes your way, it's not help. It's a trap. I lost $6,000 because I believed in the wrong people. But if my story keeps even one person from wiring away their last savings, maybe that loss won't be meaningless. So if you're watching this, be cautious. Double check. Research. Talk to someone you trust before you send a single dollar. And if you've been scammed, don't stay silent. Report it. Warn others. And remember that being tricked doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. The scammers count on your silence. Don't give it to them. Scammers prey on hope. They know when you're desperate, you'll believe anything that sounds like relief. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. If someone offers you a grant and asks for money up front, run. Share this story with someone you care about, because the more we talk about these scams, the fewer people will fall for them. This is Michael Mitnick, where we expose the lies. So you can stay safe, kindly like, share, and subscribe.